Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program Alex Lawson. He's the executive director of Social Security Works. Alex, great to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
There's a couple of things I want to talk to you about. I spent the other day explaining to people how the retirement age has risen as per the 1983 deal that was made, the Greenspan Commission and Ronald Reagan. And that despite the fact that we have less workers per retirees, that's all made up by productivity. Despite the fact that people are living longer, at least in the top 50 percentile of the income distribution, not necessarily the lower 50. The real issue with Social Security is the cap and how much of America's income is taxed by the Social Security wage, much less than it was in 1983. But before we get there, let's talk about what Biden signed the other day, the Social Security Fairness Act, because I know about this because my mom was a state worker. She was a professor at a community college. And she didn't get her Social Security got curbed because of it.
Yeah, I love your intro, Sam. I think you're possibly a bigger Social Security nerd than me, but I'm willing to.
But I'm a close second, I like to think.
So it's actually, your setup's perfect because the 1983 reforms signed by Ronald Reagan, they included that raising the retirement age from 65 to 67. So currently, it is 67 for people who are approaching that age, and that's called the full retirement age. An important thing to note here is that has nothing to do with when you actually retire. You can retire whenever you want. What that age is the age at which you receive the full benefit amount. You can start receiving benefits as early as 62, and you can delay until 70. The reason that's important is because it's not a retirement age. It's a mathematical formula, and each year you raise it is a 7% benefit cut. It's not like a 7% benefit cut. It is an across-the-board 7% benefit cut. So what Ronald Reagan did is he cut everyone's benefits by 14%. Okay, so 65 to 67, 14% benefit cut. We'll come back to, yes, that means that the current proposals to raise it to 70 are a 21% benefit cut. But when Reagan signed that 14% benefit cut into law, he also put in place, because he hated public employees, right? If you know the history of Ronald Reagan.
Before we can get to this, I just want to add one thing too. In 1983, the idea that Social Security as one of three legs on a three-legged stool as to what your retirement would be, people had yet to be able to look back on the Reagan era and see that there was going to be a full-on assault on defined benefit pensions. It used to be you worked for a company, they put money into your pension, they told you the day you signed a deal with them, I'm working here. If you work here for 20 years or 25 years, you're going to get a pension, and your pension is going to be $1,500 a month or $2,000 a month or whatever it is, defined benefit. And during the Reagan era, that was assaulted and destroyed and became a defined contribution pension, which meant there's a definite amount I got to put in, but what I get out, the company can play loose and fast with it. And also an attempt to basically juice the stock market by putting a 401k in there. So even back then, a 14% cut ultimately for people born after 1960 is still seen in the context of a pension system that no longer exists.
That's totally true. This is why it's fun talking with you. I could just sit here nodding along. You have to understand, like, the magnitude of what you just went over, though, is most people, just because it's hard, right? Like if you never had it. But what we lost with pensions is unimaginable. The freedom and security that they provided, the fact that you knew, and this isn't like a new concept, just for the record, like pensions are a really old concept because people knew like at some point you're going to become old and you're going to want to retire. So a company needs to actually replace some of your wages to keep you working. The idea that you get nothing from the company that you put 25, 35 years of your life into, that's a radical, reactionary, and brand new concept that started in the 80s with Reagan. And if you want to Google it and kind of be sad, funny, the guy who created 401ks is deeply sorry about it now. He never thought that it would lead to the total destruction of the pension system in the United States of America. And he admits that it's a huge mistake. The only thing that 401ks did is made the rich even richer, and working people just got hosed.
And so Social Security becomes that much more important as an insurance as to keeping you out of poverty when you're elderly.
Exactly. For my age, for folks who are just entering retirement now, and it actually is just it's a scale. The younger you are, the more important Social Security is going to be for your retirement because of a multitude of things, but stagnating wages, student loans, all sorts of things that the younger you are, the worse financial situation you're in right now, the worse your retirement situation is going to be. And that's who these billionaires are like, yeah, just cut their benefits by 21%. Do you want to go back to WEP GPO though?
Yes, please. Yeah. So Reagan, hostility towards public workers. Yep.
He hates public workers, so he creates this policy. I don't want to go too deep into it. If you want to email me, I'll give you all the details. But it was a brutal attack. And it was part of this larger package. So they were able to get it through because it was like, okay, we're going to literally just take Social Security benefits from teachers, police officers, and firefighters. And it was like, what? Why? And Reagan was like, because we don't like public workers. We want to diminish their power, right? Because they were against his neoliberal agenda. Organized labor fought against, giving all of the money to the billionaires. So this was a policy enacted 41 years ago, specifically designed to hurt teachers, firefighters, and police officers. And what it does is it just lowers some of those people's Social Security benefits by a significant amount. It's an enormous reduction. So the average Social Security benefit is only $1,900 as is, and you're talking about hundreds of dollars in monthly reductions, up to a grand. It could basically have somebody's benefits. And teachers, firefighters, and police officers, and it's been in place since '83. And through really, I'll tell you one thing is when I've spoken in every state in this country except for 4, and everywhere I go, I do my speech, billionaires are the problem, because they are. We just need to tax billionaires the same rate as everyone else. We can expand Social Security. When it comes to the Q&A, the first question is always from a teacher, a police officer, a firefighter, a public employee, somebody who is hit by WEP GPO, because it's so deeply unfair. And
WEP GPO?
Like, that's what the policies are called. It's easiest to just call them WEP GPO and think of it as reducing police officers, firefighters, and teachers' benefits. And what Biden just signed was he got rid of it. He repealed WEP and GPO. So no public, no teachers, no firefighters, no cops are getting their Social Security checks cut anymore. And it was this massive grassroots effort. All those people who would stand, raise their hand, stand up and be like, what are you going to do about WEP GPO? And I will admit I was wrong. I did not think that we could do this alone, standalone. And it does have some deficiencies because it is standalone. It was done bipartisanly. So we did not tax billionaires to pay for it. But I didn't think we could get it across the finish line. And
so this was passed statute. This was a law passed by both houses.
Bipartisanly passed by both houses. It's Rep. Abigail Spanberger, former Rep. Abigail Spanberger, who's running for governor in Virginia. It really was her who really muscled it through in the Senate, Sherrod Brown. But you did have Susan Collins. You did have it had bipartisan support in Congress. And then President Biden signed it into law on Sunday. I was there. And you have a room full of firefighters, police officers, and teachers who've been fighting for this for decades.
Wow.
And it was a very powerful moment. And I'd like to get into the deficiencies because it just is about what's coming. But first, I'd like to celebrate the fact that, I get emails and direct messages and texts and phone calls from people who are like, my mother, my father, me, right? Like, I can't express to you how much of a difference this will make in my life. This will allow me to stay in my house. This will allow my mother to not have to go into a facility, right? I mean, the magnitude of what this is, it's $90 billion. So you can just kind of have a number magnitude. But in terms of what it does for people's lives, it was a incredible achievement. And it was against all odds. It was the last thing that happened. The Senate passing the Social Security Fairness Act. I was sitting there on Twitter, just refreshing the cloakroom, just waiting for it. And it passed at like 12:47 a.m., right? It was the last thing they did. They were actually supposed to be closed, or the session was supposed to be over at 12 a.m. But they did it. They got it in under the wire. Biden signed it into law. Everyone will get a lump sum payment because it starts in January 2024. So every month from January 2024 to when it automatically switches, sometime probably February, March of this year, people will also receive a check for the difference of every month from January 2024 till then.
And what happens like with
huge win
with postal workers? Are they included in this, or some?
Anyone?
Go ahead.
There's a constellation of public employees. Anyone who was WEP'd or GPO'd, and I know, but it's just easiest to say those because that's how everyone talks about it. It's over primarily, and it's close enough to 100% that you can just think of it as 100%. It's police officers, firefighters, and teachers. There are other situations with different pensions and that affect different public employees. The Postal Service pension issue is generally a separate thing, and it's an attack on the Postal Service. And like Mark Dimenstein, the president of APWU, was at the signing of WEP GPO repeal because they did put in incredible work because it's the same attack, right? The same billionaires kneecapping the mailman and complaining that the mail is late are the same billionaires. So if they get
one done, then it moves the postal workers up to the next sort of project, I guess, to deal with it. Exactly. One other point, because I want to move into like the attacks that we can anticipate seeing on Social Security, because I know Donald Trump has said I'm not going to do Social Security, but at the same time, just in the same way that half his voters don't believe that he's actually going to do the tariffs, and they may be right, or that the tariffs are a lot less, or they're not going to get rid of every immigrant. Like Donald Trump says what's expedient at any given time, but when push comes to shove, you can't have DOGE or whatever that dumbass, meme coin name they have for that committee is, and cut the things they want to cut without cutting Social Security. And particularly, all you got to do is listen to the Republican lawmakers. They all want after this. But I just want to start with one thing so that we get this out of the way. One of the things, we're going to hear one of two things, it seems to me. People are living longer. And like you say, every year you move the retirement age up is a cut of 7%. And they try and do it for people who are 25 or 35 now, because at age 25, 35, you generally don't think about Social Security. I'm in my late 50s. All I'm doing is thinking about my Social Security. And so I've known it's been 67 for a long time. I just watch it go 66, 10 months, and 67. But the other thing they'll also say is like, well, why do people who are rich need Social Security? So why don't we cut down on those people? But we have a mechanism, and there may be some cops unions out there that have a great benefit and they're going to make a lot of money, but we already have a mechanism to means test Social Security, and that's called taxation, right? Like taxes, if somebody buys the insurance, which is what Social Security is, I'm buying insurance so that when I retire, if I make it that long, I will not be living in poverty. That's my insurance. This is my insurance plan to make sure I'm not going to live in poverty. If it turns out that I'm not living in poverty, I happen to have struck it rich, doing podcasting, then the government can claw back that money in the form of taxation, because I'm making so much money, I don't need the Social Security. We don't need to create some special system to means test, because taxes do that already.
Yes. Again, you're just totally correct. People are not living longer. Some people are living longer. Rich people are living longer. Not rich people, life expectancy has actually been falling, and hopefully will reverse that trend. But everyone is not living longer. And also, if everyone was living longer, I don't want every year I live longer to be spent working, right? It's my time. The billionaires don't own my time. So A, everyone's not living longer. B, even if we were, I don't want to give that time to the billionaires. I want to take that time with my family.
You know why they want you still working too? Because as long as they keep expanding the pool of workers, every time it's a 7% cut on your Social Security, but it also ends up hitting you as a depression of wages. Because if we keep people in the workforce a year or two longer, that means that they're competing with younger workers, and it's going to depress wages.
That's exactly right. And, the greeters at Walmart, right? The heartwarming story of the 102-year-old who's been working for Walmart for 3. That's not heartwarming. That's a dystopian reality of now. That's the biggest blinking sign of failure of the United States of America, is that we look at that and allow that to happen, right? That we look at, the billionaires buying another yacht paid for by denying healthcare, by delaying healthcare. Sorry, you get what I'm saying. That is exactly right. If they can keep people in working longer, they want as large of a powerless and less educated pool of workers as possible. Because when workers have power, they demand that those productivity gains go to the workers and not to the billionaires. On the means testing, you're also totally correct. You'll hear this from people when I'm, in their face with a camera and being like, will you pledge not to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid? And they'll be like, it's like a Mitt Romney thing. Like, well, I don't even need my Social Security benefits. And I'm like, fine, man, donate them to the Treasury. You can do whatever you want with your money at any time. No one is forcing you to collect your benefits. But that doesn't give you the right to take other people's benefits away. And I will tell you, when they talk about means testing with Social Security, they're not talking about Mitt Romney and Elon Musk.
Right.
They're talking a lot about middle class, upper middle class, working people. And the point is, that's not where you get, the problem isn't in that rich people get benefits. There's not a lot of money there. The problem is that rich people, ultra wealthy, billionaires don't pay in. Right? They don't pay in. They only pay in on the first $170,000 of their income. So they're like very nobly like, oh, well, I don't need my benefits. Like, fine, donate them to the Treasury, but we're going to force you to pay the same rate as the rest of us. And that's what they're trying to take our eyes off of, is the actual problem.
They're trying to undercut the universality of the program. And can you just speak to that on Social Security and how durable that makes social programs? Because, you know, with Medicare and Social Security, they are going to come for it, but I think they're going to do it in more subtle ways like the ones you describe.
That's exactly what they have to do, because when we flex with universal programs, they cannot come on your program and say, I'm definitely cutting Social Security, right? Because they'll immediately lose their job. I've been all over this country. I've polled this every which way. It's 90% of the American people do not want to see a single penny of Social Security benefits cut. They want to tax the ultra wealthy. 90%. It's totally bipartisan everywhere in this country. Republicans, independents. I have a poll that shows that libertarians, the majority of libertarians, would favor taxing rich people over cutting benefits. I have polled this every way you can. And everywhere outside of Washington, D.C., everybody loves Social Security, which is why the people who want to cut it are the billionaires and the politicians who dance to the tunes that they call here. But you'll notice I make a lame joke over and over again, but the first rule of Destroy Social Security Club is don't talk about Social Security. They never talk about it because they're afraid of it. They talk about entitlements, right? They talk about things that people don't.
We got to
really
make hard
know.
choices.
Right.
Exactly.
We just got to make hard choices.
They actually usually come with their hands crossed over their heart, and they're like, I love Social Security. I just want to make sure it's there for my children and their children. And that's why I'm going to cut their benefits by 30%, right? Like, they never say that final part, but they know that if the American people find out what they're up to, they get destroyed. And that's because of the universality of the program. It is entirely true. You see it over and over again. When a program is universal, when it benefits everybody and everybody feels ownership over it, because they should, right? No one gives us Social Security. We pay into it. It's ours. It's my money. And so if this guy is coming to cut my benefits, they're reaching their hands into my pocket and stealing my money. And that's how everyone rightly feels. So we use the popularity and universality of Social Security to defeat their attacks. And mainly what our job is to just expose their attacks, right? They're like, the DOGE, they name it some dumb thing so it seems silly. The DOGE caucus. And we're like, that is cutting Social Security and Medicare. And then people hate it. They're like, means testing. Okay, sounds fair. That means cutting Social Security and Medicare. And then people hate it. And on. But you guys, you all remember, they called it the chain CPI. They always try to make it super confusing. And
this was during the Obama years.
Right.
Digby and I used to have conversations about this every week during the Obama years. They wanted to cut Social Security by limiting the buying power of Social Security by basically decreasing the rate in which your cost of living adjustments would increase. And you're already underestimating because seniors actually have a higher cost of living rate of growth because they end up spending more of their income on things like drugs and healthcare, which is the most inflationary of all the sort of things that you have to buy.
Again, absolutely correct. I had my favorite policy. This is a sidetrack, so keep me on track, but I just have to tell you this. Because at that time, they were proposing lower cost of living adjustments. I'm like, have you ever met people? Have you ever talked to people who aren't giving your campaign money? Like, go out and ask people, hey, is your COLA cost of living adjustment, is it too high? Just right, too low? I've done that, right? I have people raise their hand, and it's exactly as you think. Everyone's like, it's way too low. It's not just that it undercounts medical inflation, and it also overcounts a lot of things that current workers use that seniors don't use. So it does not accurately reflect the cost that seniors face. So I created a policy which is still in the can. It has not seen the light of day, but maybe I'll revitalize it. It was called the Helping Americans Protect and Preserve Yearly Cost of Living Adjustments, or the Happy COLA. And all it did was switch the cost of living adjustment on Social Security to the medical inflation rate. So we also keep track of the medical inflation rate, right? So every year, and it's like 10 to 13%. And so I proposed that to people and they're like, that's way too high. Medical inflation is way too high. And I'm like, exactly. We should get medical inflation under control, right? Because it's crazy that we just allow pharmaceutical corporations and insurance corporations to jack up the prices every year by 13% with no reason other than greed. Right. So anyways,
the Biden administration did, in 2026, there will be some relief, at least with some of those 10 Medicare drug prices, right? Right smack dab in the middle of Donald Trump's term, but we'll take it because it's going to improve people's lives.
Now, I want to talk to you about
$2,000 out-of-pocket cap, January, just now, right? 6 days ago. No one on Medicare is going to ever pay more than $2,000 a year for their drugs. That happened. That's Biden. That's part of the IRA. We fought pharma, and we did win some.
All right. I want to do something because I want to talk about, the fix for this. And because I've got two IMs, which drive me crazy because I did this on Friday and they didn't know. I'm 43 years old. Until last year, I had no idea the cap on it. I don't think I'm a moron, so I assume there are a ton of other people that don't know this either. We mentioned this before. In 1983, 90 to 91% of all wage income in this country were subject to the Social Security tax. But now, because we have such wealth disparity and so many people are hoarding so much money, that it actually is only 85%. So here is what it looks like for people right now. If it's 6.2% tax. If you make $30K, you pay $1,860 in wage taxes. If you make $50K at 6.2, you pay $3,100 in wage taxes. Now, you're going to get this back. It's an insurance policy, and you're going to get it when you're Social Security. 6.2% of $75,000, $4,650. 6.2 of $100,000, $6,200. 6.2 of $176,000, which is the top bracket, you pay $10,912. Now that's where it ends. Because if you make $400,000 at 6.2%, you should be paying $24,800 into it. But no, you are paying exactly what the guy or couple or woman or whomever is getting at 176. You're paying 2.7% rate. The person making $30,000 paid 6.2% rate. But if you make $400,000, suddenly you're paying a 2.7 rate. If you make $3 million, are you paying a 6.2% rate? No, that would be $186,000. Instead, You're paying $10,000 and $10,912. You're paying a 0.37% rate. If you make $100 million, are you paying $6.2 million in wage taxes? 6.2% rate? No. You're paying $10,912, just like the dude who's paying who makes $176,000 for a 0.01% rate to pay into Social Security. That's effed up.
And that's what it's all about. That's why they're like, no, we don't need our benefits. And you're like, I don't care about your benefits. I care about the fact that the more money you make, the less as a percentage you pay into the system. It's a regressive payment structure on Social Security. The crazy thing, it's not crazy, it's by design, is that the benefits are so progressive that Social Security continues to be this massive engine against income and wealth inequality. But imagine how much more powerful it will be if we put a progressive taxation for revenue on there, right? Like we do with everything else. The more money you make, the more you pay in, because the higher your ability to pay in. You're telling me that the auto worker retirees that I spend a lot of time talking to, they could afford to pay their entire lives the full percentage into Social Security, but Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are going to have a hard time. It's going to dampen their standard of living somehow. No, it has nothing to do with that. They can obviously afford it. There's a deep rot and sickness in them. And so we can't ever think that the billionaires are going to be like, oh, okay, maybe I should just do the right thing. They don't do the right thing. And it takes policy to correct this problem, a mistake that is an artifact of the when the New Deal was created that makes no sense today, which is the cap. But you also brought this up, Sam, and you made your listeners do a ton of math. So I'm proud of everybody. I was trying to follow along too. But you also laid out, and this is really important because it's two different things. One, there's a cap, right? So 176,000. Two, since the 1980s, almost 100% of productivity gains have gone to people who make more than the cap. That's the entire problem. And you don't have to trust me on this. You can Google it and put Social Security Chief Actuary or you can go to our website and we have it all there as well. They study this. The actuaries look at this. So they have a fact sheet. Is it because people are living longer? No. Is it because people
we have less workers per retirees?
No. Also, is it because unauthorized immigrants are getting benefits? Because that's a big one that Donald Trump tries to sell right now. No, that can't actually happen. So that has no influence on it. They go down the list and then they end with it's above 90%, which is as close as you can get in actuarial terms to it's the whole issue is that rich people have made all of the money for the last 4 decades, and they don't pay in any more of that into Social Security. And that's shortened the solvency of the trust fund by 30 years. So the billionaires have not only robbed, all of the productivity gains, they also stole the future from Social Security. So Social Security is not going bankrupt. That's also on the myth fact. It cannot go bankrupt. It cannot go bankrupt. It's funded by workers' contribution. So as long as there are workers, there is Social Security. But it is true that the baby boom generation in 1983 started paying in more to build up this whole trust fund, which is the 6th time.
To deal with the baby boom. That's why they call it. There was more babies who would ultimately end up being retirees.
One piece that I know and your listeners probably know it, but just to reiterate, the baby boom is not the largest generation, though. So
millennials are now.
Millennials are. So it should be called the baby bulge. A lot of people think of it as like, oh, it's a boom and then there's a bust, because there are countries that has happened. But this is just the baby boom were the biggest until then, and then they all had children, and there's the millennials. We have immigration that makes up the difference. So we have enough workers. If we had comprehensive immigration reform, we'd have absolutely, no problem. That's the best solution. But because all of the gains went to rich people, in 2035, there will be the showdown. So this is sort of the pivot to what's going on now, Sam, and also like what will absolutely happen. So it's called an action forcing event. In 2035, if Congress does nothing, everyone's benefits will go down by 17% because Social Security can't borrow money. So the benefits going out just match the revenue that's coming in. And that's what all of our fight is, sort of setting up the landscape or the chessboard for that fight. And the Republicans, they want to do it all on the benefit cut side, right? So they would like to do it now and say they're saving it in the future, but all their proposals are just larger benefit cuts than that 17%, right? A 21% benefit cut. That's more than 17%. I'm not a math genius, but even I can do that.
No, you nailed that.
Where what we say is the Republicans, they did because they danced to the billionaires' tune, but the billionaires caused this problem. It wasn't the workers. So we want it done entirely on the revenue side. 1983 was blended, a little bit of cuts, a little bit of revenue. And a lot of people point to 83 and they're like, oh, see, that's fair. The president of Social Security Works, Nancy Altman, aid on the Greenspan Commission. She worked on it, okay? You can read her book that shows that there's nothing similar between 1983 and where we are now. So like you said, just the disappearance of pensions alone. But there's other factors involved. Mainly it's that income, wealth, and
right.
inequality.
We didn't have that. We didn't have such wealth disparity that a few people were hoarding essentially all the money and more or less hiding it from Social Security above the cap. That dynamic did not exist at that time. And so this is an opportunity for us to fix it. And as far as people saying, Social Security is going to run out of money, again, like you say, statutorily, Social Security cannot contribute to the deficit and it cannot borrow money. The only thing will happen in 2034 or 5, I guess, at this point, and it fluctuates. And again, that's also the B estimate. There's an A, B, and C estimate as to when that trust fund is going to expire. And we're in the B when we talk about this. But let's just assume it's 2035. There'll be automatic cuts. We can avoid this. And I just want to remind people that, like, the idea that this is inevitable is ridiculous. As of now, every single function of the U.S. government is bankrupt in 2026 because there's no budget. There's been no money allotted to it. They have not a single dollar. The only thing that we know is going to exist at that time is actually Social Security because it operates outside of the budget. So Congress needs to just step in, say, we don't need a cap. It's stupid. Maybe you have making $3 million a year right now, but Bitcoin could crash and you could have no money when you're 67 and you're going to need your Social Security insurance and it'll be there for you. So, Alex, I want to make sure that we're in touch with you. And when we start to see this happen, because it's inevitable. This is what Republicans do. They have been doing this since literally 1936. They have said that Social Security is communism. We got to get rid of it. And they're going to come for it. Al Gore, I'm old enough to remember when Al Gore was made fun of, for his lockbox comment. And no one understood what he was talking about until George Bush walked down to Treasury Department and said, hey, man, there's no money in Social Security. It's just a bunch of papers saying I owe you, and that's it. He tried to privatize it in his second term, and we're going to see the same thing from Donald Trump. And you're going to keep us informed when that starts to happen.
And it's already happening. So I'll just keep you informed as to the status of the fight. Right now, it's a pledge campaign. We're going to get every member of Congress to pledge no cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. If they won't take that pledge, we're driving a billboard truck to every senior facility in their district, and we'll do everything that we can to send them to the unemployment line. So you can find out information about that. We'll be all over social media, but our website, socialsecurityworks.org. And you don't have to wait, Sam. It's already underway. The DOGE caucus. Just watch financial news because that's where it's all coming from. Watch CNBC, and they're already talking about how the inevitability of how you have to cut Social Security because you're going to give these giant tax handouts to billionaires, which piles up debt. So the 10-year Treasury notes value is going to go down. And the only way to deal with that is to cut Social Security benefits, leaving out you could also tax billionaires. Right. The attack is on, and we're in the middle of it, and we need you and all of your listeners' helps to win.
Alex Lawson, Social Security Works. You know how much I love having you on. We literally got an IM said, Sam, you got to try and be less horny when you do this interview. Kids watch the show. So Social Security, this audience knows Social Security is one of my favorite topics. And you, for decades now, I think it's decades, I have watched you get win after win after Social Security. So I can't thank you enough for coming on.
Thanks for having me, as always.
Thanks so much.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.